Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's session of Health, Housing and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Committee. Just want to thank everyone for being here this evening, councillors and officers. As far as I know, there are no fire alarms expected, so if fire alarms do go off, we need to follow the procedure. Could I just ask if anybody has any declarations of interest that they'd like to notify the meeting about? No. Okay. And next, there was no public participation. No one is registered for that. Just another point, I just want to remind everyone that we're in the pre-election period and that any comments should be politically neutral. And officers will remind us if we stray off into any sort of dangerous territory. So if we could just be mindful of that, it saves them having to do that. There are no minutes to look at today. For various reasons, there are two lots of minutes, which I suspect we will look at in July at that meeting. So that's why we don't have any minutes to look through. And so I think we go straight into our agenda item 3, which is the York pipeline of projects for the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. And we've got Claire Foe, who is Assistant Director of Policy and Strategy. Sam Blythe is Strategic Manager, Corporate Policy and City Partnerships, and Pauline Stutchfield, who is Director of Housing and Communities. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just introduce the paper and then hand over to Sam to talk you through the process that led to the proposed pipeline. So in front of you, as your Annex A, you will see the our proposed pipeline of essentially investable propositions that we would like to present to the Mayor in July. This pipeline has been brought together by mapping the council plan actions that were believed to be both scalable and deliverable at a regional basis, mapping them to the regional economic framework that was approved by the Combined Authority in March this year, and then also mapping them to our 10-year strategy so that they had longer term ambition. And through that process, we identified a significant number of priority schemes that we could invite the Mayor to invest in. You will see in the annex that anything highlighted in green has already been, we've already approached the Mayor to consider funding, and we're waiting in some cases for decisions around that. Everything that's not in green is on the table, essentially. We're inviting all of our scrutiny committees. We're going to each one of York's scrutiny committees over the next few weeks. We're inviting all of you to consider the Annex A, the pipeline of proposals, and to confirm whether it best represents York's interests, and to make recommendations around where you would like to see changes. Obviously, we'll be mapping any of your recommendations to the council plan to make sure that they deliver wider ambition. If just to draw your attention to the fact that we've obviously had the mayoral election, so the regional economic framework that was approved in March has recently been updated. It was published towards the end of May, which was after the publication dates or the putting together of the mayoral pipeline. When we've completed our scrutiny visits, all of our different scrutiny committees, we will invite the leader to approve any of your recommendations in a leader decision session in July. And when we take the revised pipeline for final approval to the leader in July, it will be mapped to the new regional economic framework that includes the Mayor's new priorities, or the newly elected Mayor's priorities, I should say. If I could just hand over to Sam. Sam's going to talk you through the process that led to this point, but also provide you with a short summary of recommendations from Monday's Scrutiny Committee, which was the Climate Change Corporate Services and Service Management Scrutiny. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Claire. In terms of the development of the pipeline, it began with discussions by officers, a couple of different officer working groups across directorate and across service. It was then considered by CMT and informally with executive members. In addition to that work, we hosted a city partner meeting, which took place in early May. This didn't discuss the particulars of the pipeline, but instead looked at the priorities at a city level and what that could mean potentially with working with the combined authority moving forward. As Claire referenced, on Monday, we took the pipeline to the Corporate Services Climate Change and Scrutiny Management Committee, provided feedback. What they did was go through the pipeline by different themes. So you'll see on Annex A that it's divided into 4 sections. They provided some commentary, not against every action or every project, but against some particular ones. So, for instance, thinking about retrofitting council housing stock against the action around decarbonising and adapting new and existing infrastructure. Some work around affordable homes growth as well, in alignment to the local plan. Some work around sustainable transport and the inclusion of active travel, and not necessarily focusing specifically on areas identified in the local plan, but thinking more broadly about what it means for York. Additionally to some around the strategic capital upgrade road, the road system. And then some work as well around including the VCSE and social care sector in the project development as well. What I would intend to do, obviously that took place on Monday, Wednesday to now, is what I would do as we go through tonight. I'll make a record of the recommendations from this committee, and then if appropriate, I could circulate both the feedback from Monday's Scrutiny Committee and tonight's Scrutiny meeting, so you have a record of both, if that's okay for members. So as Claire referenced as well, we'll be taking this to the different scrutiny committees over the next month or so, finishing back at Corporate Services on the 8th of July. The intention, of course, through the scrutiny process is to basically create a rolling stock take of where we are in terms of the development of the projects for potential inclusion at the combined authority level, and then onwards to discussion with the leader at a later date. So I'll stop there. I don't think there's anything else I want to add at this point, but happy to take questions.
And just the final point I just wanted to make, thank you, Sam, for providing the process and the update from last Monday, is, of course, we're beholden to the mayoral priorities. So these are our priorities, and we're making sure that we're very clear what's a priority to York, and it's to respond to the mayor when he lets us know what his priorities are. So we're ready with shovel-ready schemes to respond to the request for more information, business cases, etc. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. So open to questions and suggestions now. I don't know who would like to speak first. Yes, Councillor Smalling. Councillor Smalling. Actually, I saw him first. I'll come to you next, and then Councillor Bassey.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and I guess welcome to you as Chair of this committee. I guess a piece of advice would be don't do too good a job or criticise the council on their homelessness contracts, otherwise you'll get the sack from the Labour leadership. A question probably for Sam is just I guess the sort of methodology behind the prioritised, ones that you've asked for money for. What was the sort of, because I guess all of these are priorities, aren't they? Yeah, these are all everything that we want to achieve. What was the sort of rationale behind that? Because I guess it could be, those projects with the longer lead time to deliver, might need cash quicker to start. I guess what was the thinking there? And I've got a few other questions as well. That's good.
Can I just take a point of clarity? Do you mean the green ones or all of them?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess the green ones. What was the ones where, if they're further ahead, they've been asked for cash, I guess why not everything?
So the green ones are in response to a request from the combined authority to look at particularly great places, so the theme great places, and and infrastructure capital investment programs and projects that they knew could be delivered because they were already essentially halfway through or a long way through the engagement process. So they were more shovel ready potentially than some of the other schemes. Looking at, I mean, they're not quick wins, are they? Building out the city centre is not a quick win, but it gives you that opportunity to get on with things essentially. So it's more of a speed requirement than necessarily anything else.
Okay, if that's okay, I'll just wrap it all together. Actually, I guess one sort of possible concern is that obviously I get as a local authority we need to sort of focus on York projects, but I guess a lot of these, the whole point of having a combined authority is that sort of cross working, and that they should be delivering. I guess we should be trying to, where possible, work with others, work with neighbours that are not strictly within our boundary, and make sure that these things deliver for residents across the whole sub-region. So I guess how I get why as a council you're doing this, but I guess is there actually ongoing conversation with the combined authority about how this delivers for everything? And then just I guess this list has been on a bit of a journey. And I guess I remember things that were sort of discussed, and I imagine city partners assumed would be in this list but aren't. So I guess speaking strict, keeping just within the cultural space, there's only really cultural passports, UNESCO, which is good to see, given previously a bit of a lack of commitment to that, and sort of prescribing, but none of the sort of wider issues as a city that we need to we need a sort of long-term significant capital funding in our heritage assets, the sort of culture, visitor economy, etc. I guess where a lot of that just seems to have totally disappeared.
Good. I was just thinking, maybe now is the time that you could reintroduce them.
Yeah, that's why we're here today, to collect those recommendations that we need to feed into the pipeline that you believe are missing, which is absolutely fine. Some of the tourism stuff is picked up already, and we took a requirement from the Scrutiny Committee on Monday that we need to make sure it covers East, West and obviously York, so that's picked up there. And you'll know that the LVEP is already being developed at the combined authority. Just going back to your first question about sub-region and how we're working across the sub-region. This was built initially through conversations with our internal policy officers, who are also discussing the same projects with North Yorkshire policy officers, and we've already begun conversations with the combined authority around whether these are the types of things that they'd like to see, and they'd like to see them expanded across the region. That doesn't mean that yes, that's definitely going to happen, because the combined authority office is not the mayor, so it's for the mayor decision, not the officer's decision, of course, but it gives us a starting point.
Okay.
Sorry, could you remind me which ones you want added to the list as well?
Well, I'll flesh it out probably further, and then
Yeah.
if we come to the end, at the end of this item, and people finish questions, sort of look at a few things.
Okay, so Councillor Runciman, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I've got various points.
Sorry, your microphone. Your microphone. Sorry, I always forget to do it.
So various comments which I'll try to attach to pages. The first one is on page 17. And you've got a list there about housing strategy. And what is not mentioned in that housing strategy, E21 and E22, is young people leaving care. And I think it should be. I really think it should be. That's the first one. On page 2021, D1, D2, D4, I wonder if the mayor will look at reintroducing scooters. They were very popular and very well known, and it was quite sad that the scooter firm, whose name has gone out of my head, withdrew. So I would like that to be looked at. On page 28, B46, you've got home to school transport, but a particular issue, and I'm sure this will come up at children's scrutiny, although of course they were cancelled last week, is send transport. And we need to look very carefully at send transport. because that's where the costs are, I'm afraid. So I hope that that will be considered. On page 25, international relationships, you're talking about building international relationships, and I hope that in there we'll go using the Lord Mayor, because that's one of the things that the Lord Mayor does. They're ambassadors for the city, and it's a good way of differentiating between the Mayor and the Lord Mayor, which is actually quite important. On page 26, I haven't got a lot more, Chair, but I've got a few. My query there is about the local plan. And it says there's a lack of strategic employment land, which restricts economic growth. Now, I thought that the local plan had sufficient land for economic growth. And I don't know where that information has come from, that there isn't a lack of land, but I would like that checked before that goes any further. And I think there's one more. Oh, yes, right at the end, page 29, B23, supporting early years training. Now, you won't have any idea, but I have a background in actually doing this at one point in my career. And you're going to work with the colleges. And if you're going to work with the colleges, which colleges? Do they know that they might have to increase the numbers? How are you going to do that? The restrictions on further education funding have been very detrimental to that sector. And if that is to be the outcome, to get over the shortage of early years staff, they will need some investment. And I would hope that at least Selby College, York College, Scarborough, at least those will. I think Craven goes into another area, doesn't it? Craven, yes. Harrogate, of course, is the other one. Yeah. So that really needs exploring. You can't train people to work with early years by clicking your fingers. It's much more technical and complicated than that. And that really, that just, because I know so much about it, it came over as a bit glib. Right, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Winston. Very helpful. Thank you. So, Councillor Bussey.
Thank you, Chair. I'll restrict my comments to climate change and health services because of the committee we're on. Looking through the papers, there's much to recommend this. I know it always comes out as if I'm just going to be hurling abuse at it, but that's not the case. But there are a few things that really leap out at me. The figure 1 wheel on strengthening the quality and sustainability of our assets doesn't actually mention the environment. And I know there's plenty in here that does, but it set a warning bell for me. And another thing that set a warning bell was the fact that the word village didn't appear anywhere in the document, except in the context of construction skills village, which is obviously something very different. Why am I mentioning this? Because the ambition of this document is to create a sustainable, environmentally sustainable future. I think that's clear that that's the ambition. Most of the villages around York and North Yorkshire no longer have access to primary care in their communities. We've rehearsed it in this committee on a number of occasions. If people don't have a car and there is no bus service, people can be left without any access to primary care at all. In previous meetings, Chair, we've quizzed people from the Integrated Care Partnership on what the words integrated care mean for rural residents. We've asked why it is that a village the size of Weldrake or Cawood or Rickle or any of the other ones in North Yorkshire don't have primary care services anymore. They don't have dentists, they don't have doctors, they don't have pharmacies. We've asked at previous meeting, people who've come to us, dentists, doctors, primary care people, would they support the creation of integrated primary care centres in the larger villages that would have both a doctor and a dentist and a pharmacy, so that these communities, some of which are 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people in size, can actually walk to the primary care centre, as opposed to what exists now, which is essentially they have to get into their car. And in many villages, if they're lucky, there'll be a bus 4 or 5 times a day. So I'd really welcome if something can be put in that acknowledges that, because all of us around the table know that we need to reduce carbon emissions from transport by more than 70% by 2030. And I know I don't think anyone around the table, this table, is like that, but there are people who like to beat rural villagers around the head saying, well, you're all in your cars, you obviously don't care. That's not the case. I think most people everywhere do get it, but we need to provide them the alternatives, either decent public transport or primary care centres nearer to them. So essentially that addresses the issues, healthy place infrastructure and transport connectivity. The only other point I'd make is that last year, about 18 months ago, we were exploring an EV shuttle bus for the city centre. And I would just flag that up to members around the table again, because one of the challenges we have in York is that we don't have a bus station. And if you've got a job in Haxby and you live in Weldrake, or you live in Haxby and you want to work in Cotmanthorpe, or whatever it is, you have to come into town, then cross town, then get onto a different bus service. If you're a young parent with a pushchair, etc., etc., etc. So I would just remind everyone of the value of such a shuttle service and how it's used in other cities to enable residents to cross town, cross the city, to enable people with mobility problems to cross the city, importantly, to enable visitors to get from the station to a hotel. I think we need to, if we're thinking in our 10-year strategy and our big picture thinking, I think that still needs to be on the radar. And I think that's my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't know if there's anything you want to respond to, or whether it's just been from me that you can't.
No, just to say thank you for all your comments. We've scribbled them onto the bits of paper. I don't know if you saw us writing down. I would just draw your attention, Councillor Bassey, we have got healthy places infrastructure, so I'll just feed in integrated primary care in villages into that, just to broaden that section a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I think EV shuttle buses is a new section, so we can add that into sustainable travel. We've got where we've got international relationships, we can absolutely add the role of the Lord Mayor to make that more explicit. Add in e-scooters as an option for sustainable travel. Let me keep going. Send transport, obviously we'll add that in, as well as home to school. And then looking at the early years training section, we'll just broaden that to make sure it's clear around the relationship with the different colleges across the region. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Rose and then Councillor Hook.
Thank you, and thank you for this. I think it's a very good document as things stand. I mean, I had 100 thoughts like the ones that we've heard so far of lots of specifics that aren't quite called out. But for me, this is, I don't think it's glib the way that it's been structured here. I think it's just not detailed. I think it's a very high level overview and things like village GPs. It mentions GPs in passing, GP practices as part of healthy place infrastructure. It does need a lot more detail, but there's no way you could put it on here. So, you know, from my perspective, a lot of things in here is there will be a plan for something, and it's meaningless until we get the plan. But also, I think that the things you're pointing out here are the right direction. Adding one extra thing to what was said about buses across and around York. York as a hub for North Yorkshire, I think, is also something that we should be looking at. That point around the combined authority and integration with the wider area. If you want to get from, you know, Acomb to Town Hall, you're going to have to get 2 buses. But if you want to get from Selby to Ripon, I have no idea how you do it, but I can't imagine it's dead straightforward by bus. And York as a kind of wheel to the spokes of North Yorkshire is probably quite useful. The one thing I did think was missing specifically is that the vast majority of things on here were sort of physical entities. there's a bit in some aspects of it of some sort of training or some bits around comms. I mean, there's a lot of detail in here, but all that sort of integrated service level or practices, it felt very light to me. There's a lot of, when we're looking at healthcare, we're looking at where are we structuring our GPs and dentists rather than how are we integrating our services, and appreciating that the mayoral role and the combined authority role isn't really there to do that. It felt like there was more that could be fleshed out in that area for me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Hook.
Mine's sort of supplementary to both the last two, but thank you, Chair. One is talking about villages and buses. I mean, to me, the mayor was going to be the big one that actually got bus services to villages where there are very few. I mean, 4 or 5 a day would be luxury when you've got 1 or none. So, and because especially, you know, if they're coming from Wetherby or Harrogate, they're passing through villages, and it would be nice, or could do a minor detour. So that's one of the things. I know that hopefully will come up in economy in place, but I'm not sure how much is going to come up in that. And so I'll talk now. But that's the crucial thing, and it follows up on yours with the hubs, you know, catch the villages as you're passing through, and that's the, so it's little extra cost really, isn't it? But think of them, don't just bypass them, please.
Do you want to come back on that at all, or are you okay?
Just to confirm, we've recorded it just like we did with the previous comments. With integrated services, that's really interesting. And I wonder on a separate occasion, we come and talk to you about the integrated neighbourhood teams, and where we're exploring how we might be working with health and community and care differently through integrated neighbourhood teams. But that's a different conversation. That's with the ICS partner rather than combined authority. So we'll think about how we can work with the combined authority to maybe accelerate or work with that kind of process with the integrated care partnership differently. Thanks.
Thank you. You'd be very welcome to come back and talk to us about that. And so that's great. Councillors, oh sorry, Councillor Smalley, I was going to ask you if you had any suggestions, but Councillor Wan, do you want to go first? Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Just a few things again, I really welcome this. There was talk of dualling the outer ring road between the A19 and the A59. I wondered why the decision was not to dual it all the way around to the A64 in the west.
Well, I can't answer that.
No,
that was from our transport policy colleagues, but we'll add it to the list and find out.
I would say extend it all the way around to the point where the single carriageway begins. There's talk of e-charging in here. It's one of the green ones. But again, it's to do with hubs at park and rides. And I wondered whether the scope of the mayoral position allowed for thinking about how e-charging can actually happen at people's homes in the terraced streets in York. So I wondered if we could have a little look at that. And then there was one more thing, just reading through some of the transport ideas. I wonder if there's scope for something around community transport in there. I know we've somewhat lost some of that within York, hopefully temporarily, but perhaps it's something that could be looked at, filling in the gaps with something that's not a full bus service, but could be there to get people to where they need to be. So it's a few thoughts.
Just to note that both those issues were picked up at Scrutiny on Monday, so I like the thinking.
Okay, Councillor Smalley.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just to prove that I do read the papers as well. Annex A, our city centre, refers to the our city centre vision going to executive in October 2024. So I guess that must have been October 2023. Don't know if that probably, don't know if it matters, but so helpfully, I've just basically found a report that you wrote, Sam, or helped write several years ago. Within Annex 1, a set of proposals to the government for a devolution deal, the last administration, so I guess, put forward a similar long list of asks, and I guess ones that have sort of disappeared are funding phase 1 of York Castle Museum's Castle Capital project. and delivering key initiatives within York's cultural strategy has also disappeared. So I mean, speaking personally, I think it'd be really good. You know, an awful lot of consultation went in, you know, with cultural partners in the city into shaping those asks. And if you wanted sort of specific wording, I'd probably just go back to that annex from 3 years ago, and the proposals are really fleshed out there. It's a 100, 200 page odd document. I'd also say there's nothing in the proposals at all about leisure or sport. So I think it'd be good to have something. Now I could like suggest loads of ideas. You know, we could. York's really successfully hosted the Women's Rugby World Cup. You know, what is the next event like that the city should be seeking to attract? Or it could be down, you know, a leisure estate route. You know, we've just built the stadium, brand new swimming pool. What's the next big leisure facility in York? Yeah, so there's loads of different ideas, but I think to not have anything at all to do with leisure and sport is quite a mission.
Okay. And councillor Vassie would like to come in now.
Thank you, Chair. And in a sense, it's developing that point, but it's about cycling within the context of sustainable transport. And if we think about it in terms of health and well-being, because of the committee we're at, I suppose it links in with what's just been said about leisure. There's surely a huge opportunity for the new mayor and the combined authority to really develop the connectivity between the city of York and the rest of North Yorkshire. We've seen time and time again over decades, York kind of chew over where cycling needs to be, and it always focuses on junctions in the city centre and struggles to get out. It struggled to get out to York's villages, but now the opportunity here is to go much further than that. It's to connect York with Malton and Selby and all the other places around us. So I'd like to think that the sustainable transport section doesn't really just talk about rebuilding junctions and dealing with underpasses, but mentions this opportunity for real connectivity across the region.
Thank you. Are there anybody else would like to speak at all? No. Okay, I think you've got quite a comprehensive list of things there. So thanks to everybody for their input, and thank you to Claire and Sam for coming along tonight. Thanks very much. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on now to item 4 on the agenda. And we now have Councillor Pavlovich, who is executive member for housing. So I don't know the exact title. Councillor Pavlovich, so it's not. Thank you. I'm just going to say I've got it here, but yes, I have actually. Sorry, it's my omission. Forgive me. And then Pauline Suchfield, and we've also got Dennis Southall and Andrew, who's head of housing management and housing options, and Andrew Bebbington, who's housing strategy officer. Okay, so I think what's going to happen here is Dennis and Andrew are going to present the paper, perhaps with an introduction from Pauline. Excuse me using your first names. It seems a bit formal to call you anything else. And then we can go on to discuss this. There's quite a lot of information to get through. So just, yeah, if you'd like to get on with that, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say hello to the committee. You're new to me. I'm used to attending other committees, but I'm 2 weeks into the job as Director of Housing and Communities, so hopefully I'll get to see you more regularly. So in terms of this report, the council has a clear ambition to reduce homelessness. And since 2023, there's been significant work across all services in the council to look at how we're addressing homelessness across public health, children's and adults, essentially. And officers have been working hard to look at all the pathways to addressing homelessness need in the city. And you can see from the report, it's very complex and very detailed. So well done to all the officers involved. It didn't include me at the time to get into this place. And you can see that culminated in an executive report in May, which delivered a number of decisions to reshape the delivery of the services, and the reports in full at the appendix. And the real focus is of the entire strategy that will come later in the year is to provide a tailored, person-centered, strength-based approach. So looking at the whole person in terms of their need to ensure that the solution for them provides them with a home that that addresses those needs. The approach is evidence-based and will shift away from hostel accommodation, provide increased levels of service to prevent homelessness and with a wraparound support from all services, and a focus upon rapid rehousing for those who become homeless but have relatively low support needs. As you will see from the report, and as I've just mentioned, following further consultation, there'll be a refreshed homelessness and rough sleeping strategy and a delivery plan that will be brought back to executive later this year. This will be based on ongoing work with DLUP and importantly with the University of York, who are providing the evidence base for this work. You'll find agreed recommendations in full from the May report on agenda page 50, and there's a full page of recommendations that were agreed there. But just to focus your attention on the 2024 actions, where the service priority will be implementation of the executive decisions around transitioning the service back into the council and integrate all provision to improve system-wide outcomes, monitor performance and build on existing governance structures to facilitate effective partnership work on a strategic level. So Andrew will give some context around housing needs pressures in the city and homelessness levels locally, regionally and nationally, and then we'll be able to answer any questions on the detail of the May executive report. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah. So I think it's just to set this service in context a little bit. Homelessness is certainly something that our colleagues around the country and other councils are seeing as a significant pressure, partly in consequence to factors like limited availability of social housing and various challenges in people affording rent alongside other food and other essentials with the inflation we've seen in recent years. Nationally, rough sleeping has increased significantly in recent years. With a 60% increase since 2017 across the board, and in York we've actually managed to have we've sort of seen a lower increase than some of the other authorities that probably have got some comparable features in the housing market. And I think it is there's some evidence that we've developed services that has had some success there compared to other comparable authorities. Just say that we know we've got a lot of sort of significant challenges around availability, for example, of one bed flats with a high level of demand for those, and also 2 and 3 bed family houses. So yeah, I think it's just, you know, it's something where the wider, you know, need for affordable housing in the city, which is well evidenced, and you know, goes all the way into the sort of the evidence base for the local plan, showing we need 592 affordable homes a year, when you know the average number of delivery has been much less than that in recent years. That wider housing pressure certainly feeds into demand for homelessness services, and has provided an evidence base that we've used to inform the new set of arrangements that we've taken to executive and that we're here to discuss this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, just to add into that and summarise, a very challenging environment. And what we're talking about, although quite often we focus on rough sleeping, we also have a lot of family homelessness in the city. Again, it's a national issue, and the incidence of homelessness across the board is rising nationally and has been for some time. Obviously, services work hard to make sure people have suitable temporary accommodation when they do become homeless, and that's whether they're single people or families. And I think, you know, I'm certainly very proud of the services that we provide in York, and I know that the administration and the staff that work within my services are really ambitious about building on the existing strengths that we have in the city and taking them forwards. And I think the paper that is the decision paper that you have access to clearly sets out the evidential basis for that. And I think what this meeting was really interested in is what the future model will look like. Now, we don't have a detailed exposition of that at present, but we could certainly talk about the principles, the evidence base, and as is highlighted in the covering report, we intend to come back with much more detailed proposals, the implementation plan, and the basis of a revised strategy, which will go to wide consultation with partner organisations, with staff, and most importantly with the people that have need to access our services. And whilst we're on the subject, what I do need to emphasise is that key strands of the strategy, as well as providing the accommodation and the services around those, is also about prevention and also about rapid rehousing. So making sure that we avoid people coming into homelessness services wherever possible. And when we do, if people don't need long-term and intensive interventions, that we get them to somewhere that is suitable for them as quickly as possible, with the right support for them, but also for people like landlords as well. We have that model in embryo at the moment, but the clear ambition is to move away, as the paper says, from a focus on hostel-based accommodation to more self-contained and flexible options with the right support for those people, making sure that we don't re-traumatise people. You'll be aware that the council is now a trauma-informed council. There are plans to do extensive training with our colleagues across the council. I'm happy to say that some of the teams within housing are already working in a very trauma-informed way, and those sorts of principles are what we want to increasingly embed in the services that we provide. And I'll stop at that point and open it up, if that's okay, Chair.
Absolutely, thank you very much for that. So, opening up the floor to questions. Councillor Vassie.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation on a subject we all consider important. None of us had planned for a general election to be happening at this time. Given the restrictions on what we can say, because we're in the pre-election period, and given that we cannot make political comments on this issue, given the difficult recent history and the 8 months we've been waiting for a report on matters relating to this issue and rough sleeping, I'm unable to participate in this discussion at this time. And I would ask that we discuss this again after the election, when we're all at liberty to say what we have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I do take your point. It's kind of a shame because I think there's certainly things that have been discussed in the past, and that I know that this is related, but it's also moving on from that to a much more integrated approach from what I can see from what I've read as well. And I think, you know, the more that we can discuss this and bring out any sort of worries and concerns, the better it is, because that's what we're here for, is scrutiny. But if
I
yeah,
agree,
so,
Chair.
yes.
I agree, Chair, with everything you're saying there. I just think that the complexity of this issue is such that we've been trapped by the happening of a general election, and I think for this to move forward, so discussion needs to take place that can't really happen today. But that's my position. I'm not speaking for other people.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on this? Councillor Runciman.
Yes, I'd agree with Councillor Vassy. I think that I've got a tremendous lot of questions, as you see from all my pages turned down, and some of them will be political. And we really shouldn't be discussing the political ones in particular at this time. I've got one or two that aren't political, which are fine, but it does hamper us, and it hampers the public not to know what's going on. And for me, it's an absolute priority that the public and anybody that's interested in particular can see what we're talking about and what we're saying.
Okay, I don't think this has been done. I mean, I don't, we didn't get Rishi Sunak to call an election to stop this being in the public view. And also, I don't think there's any reason why we can't come back to this. Councillor Rose.
Yeah, I echo the comments made that this is a happening of random chance as far as the, you know, we sort of could plan for it at some point, but we didn't know when it would happen. I'm going to ask one question, which is a fairly complex question, but I think the answer is going to have to be relatively couched because of what we're discussing here. Okay. And I would welcome it coming back another time. So if we don't want to ask questions, we want to bring it back another time instead.
Okay, if you just want to hang on it, Councillor Pavlovic, you had your hand up. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to confess to being somewhat nonplussed. This paper that you've got presented to you is a paper about homeless people and a pathway forward for homeless people. What you can make a wider general point about homelessness generally, nationally, if you like, but this is not a political issue in my view. Issues from recent months have been explored at significant length. Further papers are coming after the election. This paper is about a pathway forward of how we have a strategy for homeless people that moves them from where they are, and that may be from a range, as Dennis has said. That can be a relationship breakdown. It can be an eviction from a tenancy. How we move them from where they are to having their own place supported where they need it in a wraparound way. I don't see where the politics of that is, but if you don't want to engage in the process, absolutely fine. Don't engage in the process. But the process will still happen with you or without you.
Hey, Councillor Rose.
If I may explain my perspective on it, I felt somewhat hamstrung into the situation last night of discussing something that from my perspective was political and proved to be, as far as I'm concerned. And I've got questions about 2 years, 3 years down the road from here. I've got questions about council finance. I've got questions about relationships with partners. that aren't inherently political. 100% I agree, and the paper itself isn't, and it is happening now, not happening later, and it's the right time to discuss it. But being able to freely discuss it to its fullest extent, I don't feel is something we can genuinely do at this meeting. Now, as I say, I'm happy to ask the questions and feel like I'll get most of an answer. But I do think there is merit in having this discussed again another time. I don't want to get it conflated with the other paper that we're receiving that is much more political and backwards looking rather than this is the future state. But I don't think they're entirely separate, and I don't think that me asking questions around some of the teams and partners here in the context of council finance, it can avoid entirely the realm of politics. That's my personal perspective on.
Councillor Pavlovic.
The whole point was there will be another paper. I was going to propose that you meet again relatively soon, and that's when the work plan allows, to speak to, interrogate, scrutinise the evidence base with the academics from the University of York, whose research and advice to governments as well as councils across the world have very much underpinned the theoretical basis of the delivery of this new model. So that's what I was going to propose, but a process is going to take place over the summer that I thought you might have wanted the opportunity just to talk about, but if you don't, that's absolutely fine.
Right, thank you. I just want to say that I did discuss this with James, and we can't see anything in the rules that precludes us from talking about this as an item going forward, separate to the item that was discussed in November, which was discussed at length about homelessness and the Salvation Army. And this is a very different topic because this is moving forward, discussing homelessness and not rough sleeping solely. And I just also want to say that discussing politics was not brought up by any of the people that are now in this room. That was about the previous topic. So I don't want you to think that we've come here tonight and we're not allowed to speak about this topic. So I know I'd read through this and I'd put as my recommendation. So maybe if I start off talking about what I think, that might lead us into some discussion. I hope so. So I'd suggested that we invite Professor, is it Pierce? Please, to speak to us, come and speak to us. I think there was a conference discussed. Sorry.
Just want to say, so that it's on the record, nobody here, I think, doesn't want to talk about this. We do want to talk about it. It's only when.
Okay. That's on the record, and that's been noted. So I think in the November meeting, there was talk of a conference with Professor Please. I don't know if that took place and people from this committee went along to it. Can you remember back to November? I've been watching the meetings back during the last few weeks. No, okay. So, but again, I think it would be good for him to come along and to speak to us. It's a matter of urgency, I think, yeah.
Chair, I'm not sure about the conference as such. There was an event with people with lived experience, community links, that a number of people attended. I certainly attended. I don't know how many, I can't quite recall whether any members of this committee also attended, but it was the opportunity for people with lived experience to talk about how they saw a vision forward, and I was able to talk with them at that time.
Okay, thank you. So I also see that this is an integrated service and it brings in public health, adult social care, children housing, and it's very person-centric, as it says in the report. Avoiding people becoming institutionalized, spending a great deal of time in hostels, for instance, which is, not a great experience. And I think that the adaptability that this brings in, the reactivity to people who, this is absolutely about people who have fallen into a situation that any of us could fall into, even though we think it couldn't happen to me. That's the point is it could. And we're looking out for these people. That's part of why we joined up to be counsellors. I'm sure all of us feel the same way about that. I think I read through, and I think there needs to be good comms with changing lives as we progress through this this period, and we must listen to their concerns, and we need good consultation. And there's a need for self-contained accommodation, moving away from hostels. Now we own the assets of a lot of the properties discussed in this paper, but we do need more, and we need to offer a range of different types, which I think has been mentioned, the 1-bedroom flats and 2 to 3 bedroom houses. So these are just some of the things that I've picked up from reading this paper, and if I was that's what I'd be wanting to know about. So I think if we've got this opportunity, and you want to talk about that, I don't think there's any reason we can't bring it back to this committee. Of course and I think for sure you'd want that actually to happen. So if that helps in any way for people who would like to say something now about it.
I appreciate the difficulties you're having, Chair. The first meeting, and it's not something that I'm happy to visit on you. I was wondering if constructively I might suggest that you and I and James sit down and look at the work plan and try and work out how we can bring this as quickly as possible back to this table so that we can have a good discussion, because it's clear we all want to have that discussion. We've had a situation thrust upon us that none of us could have predicted. And if the members are happy for you and I to sit down with James and work out how to jiggle things around so that we can talk, I'm happy to do that.
That's a suggestion, thank you. Councillor Rose.
I mean, the future work plan's the bulk of the rest of the agenda, so I think we can have that conversation openly before you take it away. Yeah, I think the two choices are either to not do a conversation now, take it away and reschedule. We've got a meeting less than a month, but there's a lot in that meeting at the moment. Or we ask what we can ask now and we take the rest to a future meeting or offline. But I'm happy either way. I don't know what the mood of the room is, but I think we should have consensus as a committee whether we want to have half a conversation now or no conversation now. It doesn't sound like we're going to have a full one.
Okay. Councillor Smalley.
Yeah, I think a slightly different point, which is, I guess I'm quite familiar with the guidance as a councillor of 5 years and, with my work. Nobody has ever been able to point out within the guidance where we're not allowed to say basically what we like if the meeting's held. The code of conduct applies exactly as it always does. And I've just reread the guidance the monitoring officer sent to all councillors, and there's nothing in that at all about things you can and can't say in scrutiny. So I mean, it was mentioned last night. I wanted to say licensing. There's nothing within any of the guidance that you can't say what you like. There's a judgment call whether the meeting should go ahead that the monitoring officer makes with the leader of the council. That those decisions have all been made. Some have been pulled, some haven't. This hasn't. So I sort of think it was casually mentioned last night, but there's nowhere in any guidance, either from the monitoring officer or the local government association, that says if the meeting's held, you've got to couch your language. So if someone can point that out now, then I'm probably on the side of Councillor Vassy, which is can we schedule another meeting sort of as soon as possible after the 4th of July? But sat here, I don't think it really exists, this guidance for.
It's civil politeness, I think.
Sorry, Councillor Pavlovich.
I hear everything that everybody said. From my perspective, I'm more than happy to come back post-election to talk about this, because I am genuinely passionate about this. You all know how passionate I am about it, what my experience is over 25 years of working in this sector. I really want to get this right, but I want your involvement, I want your engagement, I want your advice. I want your input. And if you don't feel that you can do that tonight for whatever reason, and I absolutely take Councillor Smalley's point, I just don't think there's any reason why people can't say what they think, because you know, a lot of the issues ranging around homelessness are almost inherently political. But you know, I absolutely take the point. So if you want to schedule an extra meeting, if you want to schedule I do take the point about the July meeting being pretty chunky, and I want this to get the airing that I think it warrants, frankly. You know, I'll leave that with yourself and the vice chair, but I am happy to come back and talk to you individually, as a group, as a task and finish group, however you want to do it. I am more than happy, and I know that the officers equally are passionate about this as well, and you know, want to hear what you think. Otherwise there's no point in scrutiny. You're just paying lip service to attending another meeting, you know. And I don't think in my time as a member of the Housing Scrutiny Committee, I don't think we ever looked at it like that. I think we always approached it from the perspective of, we've got something to add, something to input, and I've always felt that it did make a difference, and it will make a difference on this. So let's, you know, if you feel that it's best just to draw a line under tonight's meeting, that's fine, and let's see if we can reschedule it at some other time. And we will continue to be working on it in the meantime.
Yes. I don't think
That's all I can
there's
say.
any point in voting on this as such. I think really, if you know, the general consensus is that people feel hampered in speaking, and I'm not saying people can't speak at all. We can't give political speeches in what we're saying, which is what was to be avoided. So I think I'm afraid, I'm sorry, that we're going to have to park this particular topic agenda item for this evening and come back to it, and either arrange an extra meeting in July, because we have quite a heavy load coming up. So sadly, that's what we're going to do, and I think people will come at it with a better, more open approach. Yes, Councillor Runciman.
I think we ought to thank the officers for bringing it.
Absolutely,
It's a big piece of work.
Yes.
And it's a very, very important piece of work, as Councillor
Absolutely,
Pavlovich
yes.
says. And it needs to have really proper scrutiny.
Yes.
So that they know that we've seen it and we've asked all the questions and made all the comments that we need to make. So can we thank them?
Yes, certainly. I hope I did try and do that, but thank you. Yes.
Just one other thing to add as well is that you know, we've had lots of invitations to come and engage and discuss, and have done so, and this is very detailed and gives a lot of information. Certainly anybody who's watching online or anybody who doesn't know much about it is very welcome to read up on this as well. And I think if we want to come to you guys between now and another meeting at any point, email or in person, you've all been very accommodating to us in the past, and I think it would definitely be in our best interest if regardless of the committee's aspect. As individuals, we came and engaged. I think there's nothing lost in doing so. So just wanted to recommend that to other members.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and also there's an open invitation to come and meet services as well. I know some councillors have done that and found it really illuminating. I'd encourage you to do that, and that's across housing services in totality, not just focusing on homelessness and rough sleeping. But yes, there is an open invitation there for you all to come and meet. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, thank you very much. And if you want to leave now, you're very welcome to do so. And thank you for attending. Now, this might also be contentious because having spoken with the democracy officer, we decided that there are certain items within the next work plan that could be considered politically sensitive at this time. So we were going to do that we'd invited Councillor Vassie already to discuss planning in the future. So rather than do it in the open meeting now, if that would be okay with everyone, yeah.
To respond, Chair, the next meeting for 10th of July is after the election.
Yes, absolutely.
All of that will be able to be parked,
Yes.
which would be
Yes,
helpful.
yes.
But yes, it's a hugely charged meeting, so we just have to really work out
Yes,
how to move things
yes.
in a way that doesn't slow down the functioning of the council,
Mhm.
but enables us to do what we want to do.
I think realistically, we may have to have another meeting, 2 meetings in July, if that's possible. I'm not sure. Sorry?
You decide.
Yeah, well, that's what I think would be a good idea, really. Sorry. Yeah,
Sorry to jump in. Just to say from, I think that quite a few of the items that are on for July were added by members at the last meeting. And my understanding from some conversations with officers is that there probably is scope that some of those items, we've got quite a lot on for July, not very much for September. Whether some of those existing items might be able to split across those meetings. I think there might be some, we can look into this, of course, but there might be some logistical challenges of getting another meeting in July, given things that have been moved. So we could certainly look at that. But my sense is that that might be a difficulty with trying to get an extra meeting in that time.
Councillor Rose.
Yeah, I don't, obviously you know more than me, but I don't see any reason why there's anything about scheduling things for after the election that we couldn't discuss here. And I don't think we need an extra meeting in July, based on the, I mean, the top one on the list, York and Scarborough Hospital Trust update. I was in the all-day NHS Governors Board meeting today. The public half of that has their update on CQC report stuff in there. Anyone can go and just look at the full detailed update there. It's a pretty good update. That can definitely slip to the 11th of September to get a full update from them. There's no reason that has to be July from my personal perspective, as a governor on that trust. We had a private meeting. I don't think there's anything in that would benefit from being July over September particularly. And there's other stuff on there that I don't think pressingly has to be July. If July is a bit stacked, September is looking fairly healthily non-full, but yeah, I think it'd be useful for the committee to give input, even if you guys are taking it away to decide the outputs. I think it's good for us to have a bit of.
Okay, so that's your recommendation for that one. The breastfeeding friendly culture update. I think that in July there's an infant feeding day, so we thought that would be appropriate to keep in July to highlight it if possible.
Councillor Smalley.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Smalley.
It's before it's just moved on really, but yeah, no, I mean, I'm not here on the 10th of July. I'll be trying to get across the Mediterranean on a small boat. But
to Australia on a small boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to
so,
dial in.
But basically, no, I don't think so. But no, I think just I don't know. I take the point that things need to slip to September. Anyway, as the current situation is, but I guess I mean I think, and I might not be able to make an additional meeting if it's held, but I think you could have a whole meeting talking about the agenda item we've just deferred, So I'd sort of do both. I'd move some of the things from July to September that, as advised, and then have an additional meeting anyway, just on the homelessness topic.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add, I feel like it's quite important that we have that agenda item back in front of us relatively soon. I feel like it's been a bit of a shame, although I understand people's reticence, but I think it would be good to prioritise that agenda item as soon as the election's done.
Good. Shall we carry on through this list? I think the pharmacies may be a bit sensitive, but we could move that further on. Finance and performance outturn report could realistically be moved to October.
Statutory reason why it's coming then?
Not that I know of.
Oh, okay.
Yes, certainly.
So with that one, I think there'd been a suggestion from the business intelligence team, because the outturn report that I think is on the list for July, I think my understanding is it's not going to the July executive because the date has been moved. So they were proposing to bring that at the next meeting or the one after that instead. I think the suggestion they've made for that was that because the finance and performance monitor 1 is due to be coming in October, those could be rolled together. That might be one option. I think that was probably the preferred option of the officers, but depending on what members thought, we could potentially accommodate that in September as well. Just to flag that, I think it was that was the suggestion there.
We were making inquiries, I think, that not everything had come through about whether we could go ahead with certain items. So there's the Association of Directors of Adult Social Care Officers, which is not urgent, I don't think, which could again be moved from the July meeting. The re-ablement technology, that's a very practical issue that we were hoping to have a visit to see that in person. So I think that's covered everything there. So we can look at, I feel also that it's a very weighty item that we need to have it back and have it back as soon as possible. And I can only apologise for the situation that's happened, but it has, and it's just sorry.
Yeah, I mean, not to get political, but I'm not blaming you for Rishi Sunak's decisions. I think that's perfectly fair. But I think the other thing to add on this is an extra meeting would be ideal, but you're going to run up against summer holidays, and every single thing that's been deferred during this pre-election period is going to be rescheduled for that period of time as well. So it's not just about our committee, but trying to find the time for people to prepare papers and anything else for that July meeting.
Absolutely.
They're going to be busy until the 7th of July.
I know.
It might be quite tricky all round. So I think, again, if there's a way of doing, I mean, it's not impossible for us to have a meeting in August of this committee. There's no reason why we couldn't do it. It might be lighter attendance than usual, but I don't think it's particularly vote-based committee anyway. But if we're a couple of people down, I don't think it's the end of the universe.
I mean, we can look at the timetable, look at everybody's diaries. Councillor Smalley.
Can I suggest that yourself and the vice chair make a decision? We sort of move on.
Absolutely.
I think there's enough goodwill for us all to sort of not think you're going to do anything, schedule it in December or anything. So I sort of think that's fine. And I missed as well, I think every single meeting of this committee I've been on, I've asked for that we could put an update on voids on the forward plan, which it is now there. So I guess to thank James and probably the previous chair for ensuring that's now on the forward plan.
Yeah. Councillor Bruce.
And the flip side of that, every single meeting I've asked for the neurodiversity strategy to be added back on after it fell off, and it's still not on the future list. But if we could add the neurodiversity strategy update,
I don't see why not.
It got conflated with a different update, and then it disappeared. But yes, thank you.
There was an update last meeting.
It wasn't on the strategy update. Strategy update.
Yeah. Have you got that? Yeah. Okay, so I think then we'll call this meeting to an end Unless, and is there any other urgent business? Sorry. No other urgent business? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for attending. Thank you. And thank you everybody out there who's watching as well. Thank you.